When you write a program, you probably write it in a high-level programming language, such as Python, Visual Basic, or Java. These are not the only languages available. There are literally hundreds. The code that you write is meant to be understandable to programmers, but specific enough to spell out instructions to the computer. Computers, however, cannot run Python, Visual Basic, or Java code. In order for a computer to be able to run code, it must be converted to a form that the processor can understand. This conversion is the job of programs called compilers and interpreters.
The code that you type when you program, whatever language you use, is called source code. If you use a compiler, all of your source code is converted to object code before it is run. Object code is similar to the ones and zeros that make up machine code, and this can be understood by the processor. The compilation process consists of a series of steps.
First comes lexical analysis. During this stage, variable names are replaced with tokens by the compiler. Once a program has been compiled, memorable variable names are no longer needed. The much shorter token identifiers allow the program to take up less space. These tokens are stored by the compiler in a symbol table.
After lexical analysis comes syntax analysis. During this stage, the compiler checks that all of the rules of the language have been followed. If any illegal characters are found, or if any lines don't make sense, compilation is halted and the programmer is alerted.
Next comes semantic analysis. Here, the compiler checks that variables are not used before they have been created. The compiler also checks that the data type of these variables match the data that will be stored in them.
Finally, source code can be generated and optimized. When the code is generated, it is put into a form that can be understood by the processor. This form is called object code. When it is optimized, the compiler checks that the program is efficient. An efficient program uses the smallest number of lines of code possible, the smallest amount of storage space possible, and runs as quickly as possible.
An alternative to a compiler is an interpreter. Unlike a compiler, which converts the whole program to source code, an interpreter translates and executes one line of the program at a time. If there is an error on line 5 of the program, lines 1 to 4 will run completely before the error is highlighted.
It takes time to compile a program, whereas an interpreter can begin translating and executing immediately. However, a compiled program ultimately runs more quickly than a program being translated and interpreted line by line. Another difference is that a compiler produces a new file when it compiles. The new file is the object code. An interpreter does not produce a new file when it runs a program. Every time the interpreter is run, it reinterprets the source code exactly as it did during its previous run.